Hey, good morning, guys. Derek here from BOM Socks with more BOM Bites, where we feast upon the words of Christ, and we do it one bite at a time. So we've spent the whole week so far talking about spiritual gifts. I'm going to move forward into section 47 by introducing you to this guy right here. Hello, John Whitmer. Okay, so John Whitmer, this is March 8th of 1831. So John had served as a clerk to the prophet. He initially hesitated when a new calling was given unto him. I don't know how many of you are like that, but you're serving great in a calling, you're super comfortable with it, and all of a sudden something new comes up and you're just like, okay, well, we'll give that a shot when you've been comfortable in one calling. So John Whitmer's in that situation. You look and see in the section heading what he was asked to do. He was asked to serve as the church historian and recorder, replacing Oliver Cowdery. He wrote, "I would rather not do it, but observe that the will of the Lord be done, and if he desires it. I desire that he would manifest it through Joseph the seer." So after Joseph Smith received this revelation, John Whitmer accepted and served in his appointed office. Now you look, this is 4 massive verses. So this section's not very big, but apparently these 4 verses shared something with John Whitmer that caused him to change his attitude. And again, I'm not saying his attitude was bad. His attitude was good from the very beginning. He's like, I'm not very comfortable doing this. I'd rather, in fact, he said, I'd rather not do it, right? There's times where we receive callings and you're like, okay, I'd rather not do that. So this is where he really sought the Lord's counsel. In fact, I remember years ago, I had a good friend in our ward. I served as a bishop, it's a brand new ward, and we called a person to a particular calling. In fact, it was to be the primary chorister. Primary chorister is a relentless calling. You got to have something every single week. And we felt prompted to call this particular person to be our primary chorister. And we thought, oh, she'll do great. And when we called her, the first thing was kind of like, she was like, no. And we were like, can you do that? I didn't know you could do that. I would have said, no, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't have done that. But she was like, no. And I said, oh, okay. And my counselor, he did this. And I thought this was so awesome. He said, well, this is a calling from the Lord. And he said, you're entitled to the Lord's feelings on this. So why don't you go think about it? Talk to your husband, talk to whatever, and then talk to the Lord about it. And then once come talk to us about that, because we want you to be able to feel this confirmation here. And so she was super faithful. She's like, yeah, I'll totally do that. Anyway, we just kind of moved forward with other callings, and about an hour later, she comes back, and you could tell she's just been crying. She comes in and she just says, yes. And we said, well, what happened? And she just said, well, she goes, I talked to my husband, I talked to my mom, talked to others, and she just realized I need some kind of a manifestation. I need some kind of a clarity to this. Well, and by the way, she served so good as a very faithful primary chorister. She was awesome. And so that's the thing. John Whitmer's kind of in the same situation. So verses 1 through 4 become this for John Whitmer. So you look at what he's been asked to do, and this phrase is a great one. Behold, it is expedient in me that my servant John should write and keep a regular history, to assist you, my servant Joseph, in transcribing and so forth. And then down in verse 3, it talks about keeping the church record and history continually. And then you've got a cool phrase in verse 4, and it shall be given him inasmuch as he is faithful by the Comforter to write these things. So I think that's what gave John Whitmer some great courage to be able to do this. Well, let's just try this right here. Let me change some words. It is expedient that my servant, insert your name here, write and keep a regular history. Now, I don't know about you. I am not that good at that. I wish I was better at keeping a journal. In fact, usually I'm keeping a journal somewhere, January, like, okay, it's a new year, we're going to do this. And that lasts for about 3 weeks. And then, it comes up in April again where you've just had a lesson like this. And you write something down, and then the next one is the following January. I think the trick with keeping a regular history is understanding that there is not one way to do it. There are so many different ways out there. There's ways to document, there's ways to scrapbook, there's ways to do so many different things. I remember I'm very active on social media, and so I try to keep a regular social media record. And I remember finding a company that actually printed out your social media posts into a book, and we've got those books, and I look at it, I'm like, okay, I guess I am a good record keeper with this, because sometimes we pigeonhole ourselves into one way, and there's so much more than that. In fact, with that in mind, let me show you a cool little message here.
My father was a man of few words. He and I did not see eye to eye. I grew up on a cattle ranch. My mom was an English teacher, my dad was a cattle rancher. It was in the 60s. I was a young man, I was only 17. And my father had had some difficulties with me. I had been in some trouble. He got a notice from the sheriff that they were coming to look for me. A little something had happened. And you know, my dad had talked and tried everything, and he finally got to the point, I think he just ran out of things to say. He walked over to the bookcase and he pulled out an old journal, and he just opened it to a page and handed it to me. And the journal was from my great-grandfather, his grandfather. His name was David Murdoch. As a 17-year-old boy, as I read in his handwriting and what it had been like and the problems he'd gone through, I had not anticipated it affecting me the way it did. As he used to say, I busted a lot of broncs and then they had to bust me. And he was that kind of guy. And I like that. That said something to me. As I read about him, I realized that I was very much like that. I had a lot of vim and vinegar and hadn't made a lot of good decisions to that point. But as I read his journal, it was, you know, there's something about the voices down through the ages. I'd never met him. He'd been gone many years. If he was like this, maybe I'm not so different. So I decided right then, one of the things I decided was I was going to keep a journal, and I have. I used to write them by hand, and then now with the computer, I bind them each year. But that obviously got out of my problems with the sheriff, and although my dad did let me do some time on the county farm, I never forgot that journal. I never forgot what it meant to put your thoughts down. You know, nobody's memories, they say the longest memory is not as good as a short pencil, and that's true. That's what journals do for you. I mean, as I go back and read things, I realize how much I've changed. It's made a huge difference in my life. I'm very much an evangelist when it comes to journal writing because, you know, you leave pictures of yourself behind and things like that, but you don't leave your essence unless you leave a journal. It leaves part of your soul, certainly part of your brain, and I think part of your heart on a page for somebody to read. And that's more important than almost anything you can leave behind, certainly more than money or land or wealth. That's true wealth.
I love that message. Just a good old message right there. This idea of just, it shall be given. Let me remind you again of verse 4. It shall be given him inasmuch as he is faithful by the Comforter to write these things. And so I think the same thing can happen to you and I as we do that very thing. So section 47 is a great message, just a simple message to a wonderful man, and he blessed our lives with the things that he wrote down, and you and I will do the very same things with others as we do that. And thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing. Godspeed. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.